Classical music is a wide field, from instruments to composers to music theory. In this video, I want to give you an overview over the complete thing in form of a mind map. So afterwards, you know everything that you could know of and how these things are related to each other. You can download the mind map, link in the description, is completely free. I've divided the mind map into 4 areas: theory, applied music, listening, and history. Let's start with theory. First of all, there are a bunch of musical terms with their subgenres you should know of. For example, we got general notation, where which note lies on the staff, together with accidentals, so the flat and the sharp, that either increases or decreases a note. The dynamics in music are the loudness. For example, piano, abbreviated with the letter P, is quieter, while forte, abbreviated with the letter F, means louder. Articulation describes how different notes are made, more precisely how they sound. For example, a note can be played with an accent, so the beginning of the note would be played very hard, or it could be legato, so the different notes should be played smoothly and connected, without the new articulation of each note. Tempo indicates how fast or slow a piece needs to be played. Presto, for example, means very fast. For each mentioned category, there are way more examples, but they didn't fit in the map here. Part of music theory is also this famous joke. The next part of theory are scales. Scales are made out of 8 notes. For example, there are 2 famous scales that most music is made out of: the major and the minor scale. Major sounds more happy, in very simple terms. Minor is rather sad. Why? Because of how the scale is structured. An interval describes the distance between 2 notes, and each scale has its unique structure of intervals. For example, the major scale has just major seconds, except between note 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. Each major scale is built exactly like this. Harmony is the next big part of theory. Scales and harmonies obviously influence each other very much. Part of harmony is the circle of fifth with all the existing keys. Chords are also a subgenre, for example the dominant 7th chords that wants to resolve into the tonic, and the melody that is deeply influenced by harmony and scale. Harmony can absolutely change the way a melody sounds. Counterpoint is the art of combining different but similar melodies together to one piece. Tonality is a way of looking at harmony. Is there a structure that has a certain syntax? For example, a major scale, it can be tonal. If it does not have a certain structure where the chords are based on thirds, it's probably atonal. This is also very simplified. Remember, if a piece sounds good, it's probably tonal. If you listen to Schoenberg, it's probably atonal and sounds rubbish. If it just sounds dissonant and you like it, it's probably something in between, for example Stravinsky. Thorough bass is an applied form of harmonies and scales that helps you play chords to a bass melody. It's strongly influenced by patterns and models that were used over and over in all music history. Thorough bass was a way of composing that was taught until the end of the 19th century. Contrary to most people's belief, even composers like Wagner and Bruckner were using it to compose pieces that challenged the norms of tonality. Now we get into the applied section. For being able to make music, we need instruments, that's why they're up in the corner there. Ear training is also part of applied music that is best learned by playing cadences and models over and over again while listening very carefully to how they sound. Without knowing theory, ear training is not really useful because you couldn't explain what you hear with words. Rhythm is a very similar thing. It is based strongly on being able to read notes and the understanding of how the rhythm, for example, in a 4/4 time signature is divided between all the notes in the bar. But in the end, you still have to play it, and that's even more difficult. Interpretation is the art of figuring out what to do with the sheet music, everything that is given to you. In professional circles, you try to base your interpretation very strongly on what you think the composer implied with the notation of the music. In different periods, a crescendo could mean something different, and some composers took certain things for granted and didn't even write them in the notes. Playing is the stage in which most people are involved. It's a stage where you have to put emotion into what you're doing. You can tell a story with music, but you also have to be able to play the notes with your hands or voice, which involves having a great technique. Yes, it takes years to develop. One misconception is sight reading. Most people think it's the ability to have a great technique, and that's not totally wrong, but there's another component most people don't talk about. Sight reading is 50% technique and 50% the ability to read notes fast. This is not a joke. You can have the greatest technique. If you can't read the notes fast enough, it doesn't matter. For example, you can be the greatest Formula 1 driver. If you're driving a pickup truck and I drive a Lamborghini, I'm gonna beat your ass. Playing itself does not just involve self-isolation. There are multiple different types of ensembles you can play in. For example, a full orchestra, chamber music, basically a small orchestra, a quartet made out of 4 people, or a trio made out of 3 people. I highly recommend playing together with others. It's a lot of fun and you're gonna learn a lot about music. Playing and listening are also deeply connected to each other. How you can play a piece influences how you listen to it, and if you listen to a specific recording that you like, the way how you play also starts to change. So if you never listen to any recordings, you don't know the things that you could do because you have to come up with them all by yourself. It's like saying, okay, I'm just gonna learn basic math and I'm gonna figure out all the other stuff that other mathematicians discovered by myself. That's kinda naive. The most important thing that I haven't mentioned until now is that everything on this map is basically connected to everything else, because there's no theory without playing, There's no playing without instruments, there's no instrument without composing. Everything is connected to each other, and as such you basically have to learn a bit from everything to become a better musician. A huge part of theory is also structure. Structure can change the feeling of time and give, as the word structure implies, a certain structure while listening. So you know what's happening where you are in a piece, that's why there are also the errors to listening. Structure also helps to build up to a climax, so it helps with the overall dramaturgy of a piece. Famous structures that repeat themselves multiple times in music history are the fugue, the sonata form, the aria, the rondo and the minuet and trio. Listening music is great, but without the history and the different periods, there would be nothing to listen to. There are 4 main time periods. The Baroque period from around 1600 to 1750, featuring Handel, Vivaldi and Bach. The Classical period from around 1750 to 1820 with Mozart and Haydn. Keep in mind that those years are not set in stone. There was no one who decided, okay, I'm just gonna start the Romantic right now. They vary a bit. Haydn, for example, was also a Baroque composer and a Romantic composer. In fact, the only composer in 3 different periods. The Romantic period was from 1820 to 1910, probably my favorite period, therefore I also mentioned the most composers in that period. Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, Brahms, Dvorak, Wagner, Puccini, Mahler, Richard Strauss and Bruckner. Then the 20th century, which is from 1910 until basically right now, with Ravel, Debussy, Stravinsky, Bartók, Rachmaninoff, Shostakovich and Messiaen. Here I left out a lot of composers because, to be honest, even if some people in the classical music world adore Schoenberg, and yes, he has a few great pieces, most of his known compositions are atonal and in my opinion not worth listening to. Same for Berg and Webern or other people like Stockhausen. Music history can be an interesting field itself. If you read a bit about composers, you will realize that most of them were poor, not famous when alive, and didn't have a stable relationship in terms of marriage and family. So please don't try to become a composer or your life is going to be miserable. I hope you enjoyed this video. As I said, the map is in the description, completely free to download. If you haven't watched this video, please check it out and we see each other in the next one.